Welcome to On Deck with the Ketts, the official show of the Cotuit Kettleers, taking you through everything happening around Lowell Park and all throughout the village. Now here is your Cotuit media team for this episode of On Deck with the Ketts. Welcome back to another episode of On Deck with the Ketts. I'm Jake Starr, one of your play-by-play broadcasters, joined alongside by Tim Crowley. And Tim, we are really excited to be welcomed by a very special guest, a former champion from his time in Cotuit and former Major League Baseball player, Major League Baseball executive, Ruben Amaro Jr. Ruben, thanks so much for joining us today.
Jake and Tim, glad to be with you guys.
So kind of just diving into it here, first question we have is kind of just talk a little bit about your baseball upbringing. What was it like playing baseball growing up through your childhood and through high school?
Well, I mean, it was kind of normal for me to be around baseball. I mean, I didn't really know anything differently with my dad having been involved with the Philadelphia Phillies. By the time I guess I was in, I was 5 or 6. My dad had already, or maybe even 7 or so, my dad had already started kind of in the front office with the Philadelphia Phillies as assistant farm director. He did some, he was international scouting director and signed a whole bunch of guys from Latin America. And he was also involved in a lot of different things in player development and such for Paul Owens, who was the GM, and Dallas Green, who are icons in the game here, especially in Philadelphia. But I mean, it was all about baseball all the time, I guess. And we were just, my brother and I, who I had an older brother, David, and we were always kind of involved in baseball. We never really thought it was all, we thought it was normal to be involved with a father who played Major League Baseball and was working for a Major League Baseball team.
And just expanding upon that point, certainly baseball was nothing new to your family when you came into the game. Your dad filling in quite a few roles over his time in Major League Baseball. Just what was the relationship that you guys shared around the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's so neat for me to have that opportunity. And even before my dad, my Santos Amaro was my grandfather, who's a Hall of Famer in Cuba and Mexico. So he kind of started the ball rolling, so to speak. But, my dad didn't get a chance because he was traveling so much and just really bouncing around a lot. He didn't get a chance to see a lot of our games. But when he was able to, he kind of helped out, some of my Little League coaches and such. Here in the area when I played, Little League Baseball and in a variety of roles, American Legion Baseball and that sort of thing. But the cool part about being my dad's son was the ability to be at the field a lot, especially at Veterans Stadium with the Phillies. My dad became a first base coach in, I think it was 80 when they won the World Series, and I got a chance to be on the field a lot as a bat boy. And so just being around some of those great players and Mike Schmidt and Steve Carlton and Larry Boa and, that championship team, Bake McBride was one of my favorite players, Manny Trio. I mean, I can go sit here and run off the entire roster, but for me to be around baseball a lot, that was really the kind of the impetus behind me wanting to try to continue as a baseball player sometime in the future after that.
So you played high school ball at Penn Charter in the Philadelphia area, and then you made your way to Stanford. So talk to us a little bit about your time in high school, but especially that recruiting process and how you ended up going all the way across the country to play at Stanford.
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually was probably a much better soccer player and was a baseball player. And I thought I might take that route. But when I got a chance to spend some time around all those big leaguers in Philadelphia and around that championship team, baseball became my thing. And I was recruited to several different schools, and in some regards, I kind of recruited other schools myself. I mean, I was really interested in at Stanford. I was I could think the 5 choices that I had at the time when I was being recruited were Princeton, Duke, Vanderbilt, Lafayette, and Stanford. And I guess I was like the last recruit to go to get my visit at Stanford. And I mean, when I got to the campus, I was actually a pretty close call. Before I went to the Stanford campus, I was thinking about going to Vanderbilt. My brother had gone to Duke, so that was one of the choices that was of interest to me. But when I got to the Stanford campus, I said, man, there's no way I can pass up this opportunity. And there's a lot of people who doubted the fact that I would be able to even play there because I was coming from kind of a, Interact school was not really basically known for, major baseball players or recruits. But I don't know. There was something inside me that, I was one of those guys that never took no for an answer. And fortunately for me, I ended up playing 4 years there and getting an opportunity to play a lot.
Now, as you know, going to the Cape League, there's just as much of a recruitment process to get there as well. So just take us through what that process was, finding your way to Cotuit, and what really drew you to this league.
I talked to one of our big recruiting coach was Dean Stotts. He was like the assistant head coach there at Stanford, and I think he talked and had some contacts with some people there in the Cape. I wanted to stay on the East Coast because I was, obviously a Philadelphian, so I wanted to stay close to home. I knew that I knew it was important for me after having talked to my dad about the possibility of using a wooden bat. That was the first year. My first year, I think, was the first time they've actually used wooden bats in that league, and I think that was a really important part of my development. Just being, I can't remember exactly how it all panned out, but I know that I ended up having a contact with Arnold Mycock, who was the GM there, who was a legend, and God rest his soul. I mean, certainly missed, but he was a phenomenal human being, and he brought me to Cotuit, and I became a Cotuit Kettleer.
And talking about your time as a Cotuit Kettleer, that was the year the team won the championship, 128-14 that season. Talk about just that season as a whole and what that championship experience was like for you and all your teammates.
Yeah, it was a great moment for me, and just a really tremendous experience. I mean, if I would wish that on any player who had interest in playing collegiate summer ball. It was a very competitive league. There were some great players that were playing in that league. I mean, I think Todd Stottlemyre was playing for Harwich. I mean, Joey Albert Bell was playing for Chatham. I mean, there were some great players that I played with. Greg Vaughn, Sweet G was our center fielder, and we had an excellent pitching staff. I think we had Derek Lilliquist and Carpenter, and that may have been that second year. But I know that there were so many different good quality players. I had a teammate there in John Ramos, who was a excellent catcher. He was my roommate in college and my teammate at Cotuit. Played with Ed Sprague the next year, and he came out the following year. But just being able to play on that team and competing against some of the best players in college and playing to the level that we played and having won that championship, that was pretty extraordinary.
Now, after those times at Stanford and Cotuit, you got the chance to go take your shot in pro ball, spend parts of 8 seasons in the majors as well. What were some of your favorite memories from your time in pro ball?
Well, obviously, your first call up is a big day. You get a chance to call your parents and say you're a major leaguer now. It was kind of short lived. I was only there for like a week, and then I was sent back down. But then I got traded after that 1991 season. I was traded to the Phillies, and I guess my biggest moment at that time was to actually make an opening day roster, because I mean that's when you feel like you've kind of sort of made it, right? You made an opening day roster and got a chance to play a little bit. Had a lot of success in the early part of the season, and then I kind of went in the tank. But that first, I guess, couple of weeks of the season in '92, when I took over for Lenny Dykstra, who had been injured, I think I hit like 3 home runs in the first week. I was leading a lot of in a lot of offensive categories, and unfortunately, I tried to live up to that instead of just kind of stay within myself. And I really struggled after that, but for me to be able to come back and then play in '93 with the team that went to the World Series with some players like Lenny Dykstra and Darren Dalton, who was a very close friend. God bless him. Dave Hollins, so many of them. John Kruk, just some great players who had some great, unbelievable years in '93. That was a magical year for us, and I got a chance to play on the team that went to the World Series. And after getting traded again went to another great team in Cleveland in '94 and '95, and probably played in the best offensive team I've ever been around in '95. Went to the World Series and played in the World Series. So kind of dreams come true for me when you get a chance to be. I was kind of a very mediocre major league player, but I got a chance to play on a couple of really great teams, got a couple of rings, and that was a great time for me.
Then we talk about your post-playing career. You came to the Phillies pretty much right after you retired under then GM Ed Wade. Then you learned under Pat Gillick, and you had the opportunity, in 2009 to lead the charge for the next handful of seasons. Just talk about your time as the general manager of the Phillies and working for the Phillies organization and what it was like just being in the front office for, upwards of 15, 20 years there.
Yeah, I mean, for me to be able to be the steward of my homegrown team and my hometown team was really a dream come true. I mean, I remember walking into the ballpark in the morning sometimes in the early part of my career and thinking, wow, how blessed am I to be able to do this? I had great mentors. Pat Gillick is a Hall of Famer. Ed Wade, who's had a ton of success and probably hasn't had enough praise and hasn't gotten enough love for a lot of things he did in Philadelphia and Houston. But really terrific mentors who helped me guide my path. And for me to be able to be the GM and, in my first year as a GM, go to the World Series and play against the New York Yankees. Unfortunately, we lost, but they had a great team. Yankees had a great team. We had a great team. And unfortunately, we didn't win. But I was really proud of the fact that I was part of something really special. There was a 5 or 6 year period there in Philadelphia where it was probably the best era of the history of our franchise. And for me to be a big part of that was very gratifying for me.
And we'll continue to dive into that, as you mentioned, that 5 or 6 year window with an unbelievable wave of talent coming through Philadelphia. But focusing in on that 2008 season, the year before your promotion, bringing home a championship to Philadelphia, just talk about the construction of that roster with so many stars, the middle of the lineup with Utley and Howard. Cole Hamels had one of the best postseasons by a starter, and then Brad Lidge locking it down at the end.
Yeah, it was a kind of the culmination of what Ed Wade set out to do, which was to get good and stay good, and then start and build from within. I mean, he had opportunities to trade some of those guys, the Utleys and the Howards, and a lot of those players that ended up being, the foundation of those clubs. And I mean, when you're talking about, the best shortstop, the best second baseman, the best first baseman in the history of your franchise playing together at the same time. Pretty extraordinary. You have a pretty good base. And then you talk about Cole Hamels, who's probably one of the best draftees we've ever had as a left-handed pitcher. So when you have that kind of base, then you can start working around it, right? And to adding pieces to it. And I think that was the beauty of what Pat Gillick was able to do. And for him to add Brad Lidge and then slide Brett Myers back into the rotation and to bolster the rotation a little bit, add a guy like Joe Blanton during the course of the middle of the season. Do the little things, the Matt Stairs, the JC Romero's, there's a lot of little pieces that Pat added to that team that, made us a championship caliber club. We played very, very good baseball when the time came and we were very fortunate to be able to play the kind of baseball that was necessary to win during the course of the playoffs. And it was magical for the city.
And you kind of move forward now. You talked about that home run as a whole, but 9, 10, and 11 specifically, when you were the general manager, I know the big thing was continuing to add pieces, adding the Cliff Lees, the Hallidays, the Lees again, the Hunter Pences. The list goes on and on. Between all the acquisitions made, especially in that 3-year window, what was that experience like, just trying to continue to sustain that success and build off of each prior year's success? Because every year it seems like the bar got higher and higher.
Yeah, the expectation got awfully high, and very rarely does a GM take over a new team after winning the World Series. That almost never happens. And when, typically you're taking over a team that was not faring very well. But I have the great fortune of being able to continue to add to those teams. We had a chance to win the World Series, I think, in all 3 of those years, in 9, 10, and 11. We knew at some point, because of the way that the game is set up and the fact that you would, the draft compensation, that sort of thing was going to make it tough for us to continue to sustain. We made some deals to try to, continue the flow of minor league players, but we just didn't do a good enough job. And some of the decisions that we made, were for the short term as opposed to the new long term. I thought in 9, 10, 11, we had just as good a club, if not better than the 08 club. We just didn't play very well in the playoffs, unfortunately. And that's kind of how the ball rolls. But I was really proud of, and I always believed as a GM, especially in Philadelphia, that my job is to try to sustain that possibility of winning in a championship caliber club as long as I possibly could. We probably could have made some better decisions and kind of got out from under some of those contracts a little earlier. We had some injuries that slowed us down. The guys got a little older, a little long a tooth, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I was glad to be able to make those decisions, and trade deadline time was a very fun one for us when we were in that cycle.
Now, continuing on in your post-playing career after that time in Philly, you made a little bit of an unconventional switch back onto the field in 2016 when the Red Sox hired you as their first base coach. So just talk about that transition, because usually you don't see a ton of guys moving from the front office back onto the field. Just talk about that transition and what that entailed.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why I did it. One, I love the game, and it didn't matter what role. And for me to be able to do it in a storied franchise and to work with a guy like John Farrell, who was the one who was managing the club, to be able to work with guys like Torey Lovullo and Chili Davis and guys that I played with in the past and knew very well. Vic Rodriguez was one of the hitting coaches. Knew Carl Willis very well, who was our pitching coach, and there was just a really good, strong group of coaches. But Brian Butterfield had become a very good friend, a longtime coach who I knew obviously over the years as a longtime third base coach and infield coach. For me to have that opportunity was great, but I think the biggest reason why I did it is because I wanted to get back down on the ground floor with the players, and to get a good feel for what it's like what motivated them. To do some observing. I had some interest in the possibility of maybe becoming a manager. And I thought that was a great way to try to move toward that goal. It ended up not happening, which is fine, but it was a great learning experience for me. It is the first time I actually was coaching at any level. And for me to be able to work with guys like Mookie Betts and Andrew Benintendi and Jackie Bradley Jr. and CY, Chris Young, just superhuman beings, great players, but really superhuman beings. And I learned a lot from them, and hopefully I learned something from me during that time.
Now moving ahead now to further down the road, you kind of ventured into the broadcasting side of things. You work a lot of Philadelphia Phillies games in an analyst role. You work with Tom McCarthy on the NBC Sports Philly broadcast. What's that experience been like, working with T-Mac and getting a chance to be upstairs in the booth?
Yeah, well, Tom is a professional and announcer. I mean, he wears so many hats he can do. I mean, he is so versatile. He can do NFL, he can do radio, he can do basketball at a number of different levels. He's fantastic. It's been a great learning experience working with him. It's my third year now. I love it. I really enjoy being able to observe the game and call the game. And I think that the fact that I've worn so many different hats, I can give a lot of people different perspectives on what I see as far as analyzing the game and having opinions about things that happen during the course of the game. And that's a fun part. That's been very fun for me. Hopefully I can continue to do that. I'm going to get a chance to do some MLB Network stuff later on this spring and summer as well. And I'm looking forward to doing that. Also, I've got an opportunity. Hopefully I get an opportunity to work with Harold Reynolds and Dan Plesac and so many great, unbelievable reporters there and analysts, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But I mean, for me, you get to be around the game, you get to talk about the game, and it's a game that I love and I've grown up knowing and loving. And for me to have that opportunity, it's very gratifying, and I'm very grateful for it.
Now, Ruben, finally, before we let you go, we'll circle back to Lowell Park for just a moment, a place that I know so many fans would love to see you back at some point down the road. But just even from your time as a player in the years since, just what can you say about the community of Cotuit that made your time there so special and since then?
I'll tell you what, it was fantastic. In my first year, I had a job working at a house, kind of a houseboy, but my second year, I worked with Ed Sprague as one of the instructors at like kind of a mini camp or what have you, for working with the young kids, and the families were just so gracious and so nice. I lived with the family called the Sadowski family. Still keep in touch with them. I know Ed Sprague also stays in touch with them as well. They've kind of spread out in the DC area and in other places, but just a wonderful community to be able to play baseball, so well supported. And I mean, as I said, I think as a young athlete, there was no better place to play. I mean, how lucky can you be to be able to play at Cape Cod? And Cape Cod is one of the coolest places to be in the summertime. Forged a lot of friendships there. had a wonderful experience playing against some of the greatest players who became great players in the major leagues over time. And I really value that time playing at the Cape, those 2 years, greatly. I think it was a huge development for me personally, and it was a great development for me as a future professional baseball player. So I have great memories. I miss the folks there. I'm looking forward maybe to getting a chance to come up there, and hopefully I get a chance to do that this summer.
So Ruben Amaro Jr., former Major League Baseball player, front office executive, coach, has worn many hats, including broadcaster, but most of all, a champion and a legend with the fans in the village of Cotuit. Ruben, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, guys, and good luck to the Kettleers. Go Cotuit.
Less than 2 months until the Kettleers season gets underway at Lowell Park. Can't wait to see you out there. Stay updated with us here all off season long as we get closer to opening day and all the great content coming up. We'll catch you next time on Deck with the Ketts.